Hello friends, very warm welcome to my business laws channel. This will be the third lecture to the first chapter, which is nature, meaning and kinds of contract. So in this third lecture on the first chapter, I will be covering kinds or classification of contracts. Now there are certain bases on which we can classify the contracts. The very first basis of classification is creation or formation. Friends, on the basis of creation or formation, we can classify the contracts into four categories. First one is express contract, second is implied contract, third is constructive or quasi contracts, and the fourth one is e-contract, which is also known as high-tech contract or digital contract. So friends, 4 points I would like to repeat. The very first is express contract, second is implied contract, third is constructive or quasi contracts, and the last one is e-contract. Now, what is express contract? Express contract is the sum total of express offer plus express acceptance. Friends, contract is said to be express when offer and acceptance constituting an agreement that is made in words, spoken or written. Now, there may be any example you take. Any example of express contract. Say A and B, they enter into the contract regarding buying and selling of car, second-hand car, and face to face they enter into the agreement, and they give this agreement the written form. Then this will be known as express contract. On the other hand, implied contract means where offer and acceptance constituting an agreement that is made otherwise. Then the question arises, how is it made? It is inferred from the circumstances. Offer and acceptance both are inferred from the circumstances, or they are inferred from the conduct of the parties. Now we can take any example of implied contract, implied offer. DTC buses or metros plying on the roads, or at various metro routes, they are making an implied offer. Now making the use of metro facility or getting into the bus, that is the example of implied acceptance. Now weighing machines and then ATMs, they are also examples of implied offer. Now making the use of weighing machine, getting card from the weighing machine and withdrawing money from the ATM, that is the example of implied acceptance. So friends, you must have observed in case of implied contract, offer and acceptance both are inferred from the circumstances, or that they are inferred from the conduct or behavior of the parties. Now coming to the third type of classification on the basis of creation or formation, that is constructive or quasi contracts. Now in my last lecture class, in lecture 2, I did talk about quasi contracts. Now quasi contracts are the contracts which have been created by the law. These are the obligations created by the law. These obligations created by the law, they are made in the absence of offer and acceptance. But still, they have the same consequences, which the contract has. Sections 68 to 72 of the ICA 1872, it deals with the various 5 types of quasi contracts. So quasi contracts also have the same obligations as the contract has. Now coming to the last type of contract on this basis, that is e-contract. And nowadays we do talk about e-contract also. E-contract is the sum total of e-offer plus e-acceptance. Here contract takes place. Even e-contract should have all essentials of valid offer and valid acceptance. Many times, when we enter into the e-contract, we find there, it is the last point is it may contain various terms and conditions. Then we always write I agree. We click on the I agree button. It means those conditions, terms and conditions laid down under the contract are acceptable to us. So friends, this is all about the classification of contract on the basis of mode of creation or formation. Now coming to the second basis of classification of contract is extent of execution or performance. Even on this basis, we can classify the contracts into 4 categories. Very first one is executed contract. Second is executory contract. Third is partly executed and partly executory contract. This partly executed and partly executory contract is also known as unilateral. And the last one is bilateral contract. So I would like to repeat. The very first point is executed contract, executory contract, partly executed and partly executory contract, and the last one is bilateral contract. Now friends, I would like to explain all these terms one by one. The very first one is executed contract. To what extent the contract has been executed? To what extent the parties have performed their part of obligation? Contract is said to be executed when both the parties to the contract have performed their respective obligations under the contract. Nothing remains to be outstanding. Say for instance, A and B, they enter into the agreement regarding buying of laptop. Now A has supplied laptop to B person and B has paid the price. It means both the parties, A and B, they have performed their respective obligation under the contract, so the contract will be known as executed. Executory. Now in case of executory contract, one party or both the parties have to perform their respective obligation in the future period. That is, something remains to be done or everything remains to be done. If everything remains to be done, it means both the parties' obligations are outstanding, then that is known as bilateral contract. But if one party has performed this contract and other party's obligation is outstanding, then that will be known as partly executed and partly executory contract. Now continuing with the same example where I have taken the example of laptop. Now A has to deliver the laptop to B on particular date and B has to pay the price to A on particular date by evening. It means both the parties' obligations are outstanding. The contract will be known as executory. If A has delivered the said laptop to B but B has to pay the price to A, it means one party has performed his part of obligation and second party's obligation is outstanding. So this will be known as partly executed and partly executory contract. Since one person has performed his part of obligation and other person's obligation is outstanding, so this will also be known as unilateral. Uni means one and bi means two. Now coming to the last type of contract on the basis of extent of execution or performance, which is bilateral. If both the parties' obligations are outstanding, then the contract will be known as bilateral. Now, other way to put this classification, we can say executed may be of two types, unilateral or bilateral. If both the parties have to perform their respective obligations in the future period, both the parties' obligations are outstanding, then that will be known as bilateral. If one party has performed and the other party's obligation is outstanding, that will be known as partly executed and partly executory, or it will also be known as unilateral. So till now I have covered two bases of classification. The very first was creation or formation, and the second was extent of execution or performance. Now the third basis of classification is validity or enforceability. Friends, on this basis, we can classify the contracts into 5 categories. The very first is valid contract, second one is void contract, third is voidable contract, fourth is illegal contract, and the last is unenforceable contract. Now first one is valid contract. Valid contract is one which possesses all the essentials which have been laid down under section 10 of ICA 1872. Now all these 11 points starting from offer and acceptance up to the last point, 11th point, legal formalities, I've already covered in lecture 1 to chapter 1 in my last video. So friends, any agreement which possesses all essentials, 11 points which have been laid down under section 10 of ICA 1872 is known as valid contract. Valid is also known as enforceable. And second is void contract. Void contract has been defined under section 2J. Any contract when it becomes void, then it ceases to be enforceable. When it ceases to be enforceable, then it doesn't remain valid because now it has lost its enforceability. So the definition of void contract has been laid down under section 2J of ICA 1872. Friends, the term void agreement has been defined under section 2G. Any agreement which is not enforceable at law is known as void agreement. But remember, void agreement is different from void contract. Void agreement can be void ab initio, but void contract can never be void ab initio. Now the question arises, what is the meaning of the term void ab initio? Void ab initio means void from the very beginning. It's void since its inception itself. Void agreement is void from the very beginning, since its inception itself, the moment it was made. But when we talk about void contract was valid in the beginning. And due to some reasons, maybe change of law or destruction of subject matter or death of the promisor or incapacity of the promisor, outbreak of war. So these may be the reasons due to which valid contract may be transformed into void. So you should not get confused between the two terms. One is the void agreement and second is void contract. Sometimes question is asked in the examination under the true-false statements. Void contract is void ab initio. Friends, this statement is wrong because void contract cannot be void ab initio. It is a void agreement which can be void ab initio. Now the third one is voidable contract. Now voidable contract has been defined under section 2I. Voidable contract is one which is enforceable at the option of one or more of the parties, but not at the option of other or others. One or more means that if say A and B are the owners of a car and C at the gunpoint obtains the consent of A person, then A can go to the court, can proceed against C person, or B can go to the court and proceed against C person. But if the car is owned by one person only, say A person, then A person only and C obtains A's consent at gunpoint, then it will be the A person only who will have the right to proceed against C person. That is why it's very clear from the definition. Voidable contract is one which is enforceable at the option of one if there is a single owner, at the option of more of the parties if there are joint owners, but not at the option of other or others means a person who is not a party. has no right to proceed against the wrongdoer. Say A is the owner of car and C has obtained the A's consent at gunpoint. Then A's son or daughter or wife has no right to proceed against C person, because that person is not a party. Any person who is a stranger to the contract has no right to sue on the contract. And you all know that one of the essentials of valid contract is that consent must be free one. And consent is said to be free when it is not affected by coercion, undue influence, fraud, and misrepresentation. So, in case of absence of free consent, the contract becomes voidable. Remember, friends, voidable contract provides two rights to the party. Aggrieved party. One is the right of affirmation, second is right to cancel the contract. Continuing with the same example where I have told you A is the owner of a car and his car is worth rupees 2 lakh, but B at the gunpoint compels A person to sell his car for 1,80,000. Now A has two options to exercise. At that very moment, just to save his life, he may give his consent, but his consent will not be free one. And later on, he has two options to exercise. One is affirmation. He may say that even if I am getting a lesser amount, but I don't mind, I'll sell my car and I will go and buy another car, new one. And second option available to him is, he says, no, why should I part with my old car? No, I'm not going to accept this particular offer. I want to cancel the contract. So friends, to sum up, when we talk about voidable contract provides two rights to the parties. One is affirmation, second is cancellation. And then after that, the next point is illegal contract. First of all, I would like to make it clear that it is wrong to use the term illegal contract. Because if in the contract we find the objective is illegal or consideration is illegal, that agreement will remain agreement only. That can never take the form of valid contract. So it is wrong to use the term illegal contract. We should use the term illegal agreement. Illegal agreement term has been defined under section 23 of ICA 1872. In an agreement is illegal and void if its objective or consideration is illegal. It is fraudulent. It is against the provisions of law. If permitted, it would defeat the provisions of law. As friends, under the Hindu Marriage Act, bigamy or polygamy is not permitted. Person who is already married without getting the divorce from his or her first spouse, person goes for second marriage. The second marriage will be null and void. Or it is opposed to the public policy, or it implies or involves injury to the person or property of another, or it has been regarded as immoral by the court. If any of the 5 points we find in the agreement, then that agreement will be termed as illegal. Every illegal agreement is void, but every void agreement need not necessarily be illegal. And coming to the last point, which is unenforceable contract. Unenforceable contract should not be confused with the term illegal agreement, with the term void agreement. Here we are talking about contract, but there we talk about agreement. Remember, there is a distinction between the two. Why the contract becomes unenforceable then? Because of some presence of flaw. Take the example of bill of exchange. There is some stamp, requisite stamp, which is affixed on the bill of exchange. If it is understamped, then it is not valid. The moment the proper stamp is affixed on it, then it will become enforceable. So why is the contract unenforceable? Because of presence of some flaw. The moment the flaw is removed, then in that case, the unenforceable contract will become enforceable. So friends, before I finish this lecture, I would like to conclude. I would like to repeat all these points. Three bases I have taken in my lecture today. The first was mode of creation or formation. Second was extent of execution or performance. And the last point was, last basis of classification of contract was, validity or enforceability. So it is all about this third lecture from my side. Do like and subscribe to my channel so that you can get notifications of my subsequent videos. So it is all about today. I'll meet again. Okay friends.